Welcome back to Count Me In, IMA's podcast about all things affecting the accounting and finance world. This is Adam Larson, and I'm your host who will be introducing you to our bonus episode's guest speaker, Sangeeta Shankaran Sumesh. Sangeeta is a chartered accountant and management accountant with over 2 decades of experience, including leadership positions with multinationals, across geographies, and most recently serving as executive director and CFO of Dun & Bradstreet Technologies. In this conversation, my co-host Ruba Zidan talks with Sangeeta about various aspects of being an influential woman in finance, including gender equality, rising up the corporate ladder, and the importance of leadership and career optimization amid COVID-19. So, to hear more, let's head over to their conversation now.
So, good morning, Sangeeta, and thank you so much for joining us on Count Me In's podcast this morning.
Hey, good morning, Roba. It's great to connect with you and pleasure being on your show.
So I have so many questions for you because India is one of our biggest regions for IMA globally, and we're very keen to learn more about your experience as a seasoned finance professional and a woman. So women in finance in India represent a mere 11% compared to 16% globally. I personally find these figures a little shocking and an indication that much work, I mean, even on the global stage, don't get me wrong, that much work still needs to be done to establish gender equality within the finance sector. But what comes to mind when I mention this to you? I mean, what is your take out from this?
To be honest, I find it ironical and surprising as well because you're right to say that the percentage is pretty less. But, if you look at women, I think women are actually so good with money management. It's women who are actually running them. How big or small the budget may be, they're able to fit in everything within that. And it's so beautiful. They're so efficient. They don't even need assistance there. So considering that, logically speaking, there must be a lot more women in finance, which I find it surprising that it's not the case. But having said that, I think there are a lot more of the women who are a lot younger who are wanting to get into finance, and I think there are already quite a few of them in the finance domain compared to, let's say, a few decades ago. So that way, I think it's kind of promising, and I think all it needs is, most women have to overcome this mental resistance, and I think some of them tend to get bogged down because, if you look at a CFO is normally like, the number 2 position, right hand to the CEO and stuff like that. So women need to come out of this mental resistance. And at the same time, I think they need a lot more motivation and they need to be encouraged by the seniors, the male colleagues, and definitely their family as well.
From your personal experience, have there been any particular challenges that you faced when it came to promotions and climbing up the corporate ladder? I mean, as you mentioned, it's important to have a support system at home as well as within the companies that you work in. But for you personally, how has it been? Has there been a limitation in the facilitation of your climbing up that ladder professionally?
I think I have been really blessed, because the kind of mindset my parents inculcated in me when I was younger was that gender is never an issue. So it's either that you are capable of achieving what you want to achieve or not. So it was like, coming down to my individual self. And I think ignorance is bliss because, during my growing up years, especially in my career, there was not this so much talks on this gender equality and all that. So and coming from this background and the mindset, so it was more like, am I capable of achieving this? Can I do this? Can I grow? Can I, balance my family and my career? It was always those kind of thoughts. So I strongly believe that, if a person, I mean, male or female, whoever is able to add value, I think, all the promotions and everything else becomes secondary. So firstly, you must have the confidence in you. I always say when you want to start off your career, you should just take a pause and ask yourself, why do you want a career? In the sense, is it like really for yourself or is it because of financial reasons or,
Very good question.
what is it? Yes. So you need to first be aware and clear of why you want to get to work. And of course, if not, you can always explore other options like, work from home or entrepreneurship or anything like that. So I think this gender thing, I think a person must remove it out and, focus on adding value and what is it, how are you contributing to the organization, then I think your growth becomes quite automatic. Like in my instance, I think I was really, really blessed. When my son was born, I was promoted as an assistant manager. My daughter was born, I was promoted as a manager. Everything happened at the same time. And yes, I
Brilliant.
must admit, yeah, it was actually overwhelming because I was a new mom and then new responsibilities at work. And you're already facing the postpartum blues as well. So it was a bit of a challenge that way. But I think, once you're able to tide over that and, you have your set clear goals to your own self and go by that, I think it's a lot better.
That's brilliant and very empowering advice. By the way, in the Arab world, we have a saying that every child comes with his own fortune. So I guess that manifested in promotions at your end.
Right, yeah.
So you've done really well in your career, and as a leader in your industry, and amid such a turning point in history, not just on the Indian economy platform, but also globally. So, what kind of leadership transformation are you looking to implement, or at least propose and suggest and facilitate within your organization? And is that something that you're working on currently in your capacity?
Right. So before we even deep dive into this, I want to talk about this wonderful experience that I had. So I'm also a high performance business coach. So I think about a year ago, I conducted a leadership workshop for some of the CXOs. We have a CXO club here, and I did like a workshop on leadership coaching. So it was all very senior leaders from different industries were present. And what emerged at the end of the workshop was something so beautiful. And they came up with 5 very important aspects for any leader. And this was like more out of self-realization and everything. And the reason I want to share this here is I think, irrespective of the current crisis or anything, as a leader, I think these are very valuable things. So the first thing that they said was, the listening skills. Many times leaders, we're so caught up in our own things that, we don't even listen to what the team members have said, what is that they're
Absolutely.
feeling, what are their viewpoints. Yeah. So that becomes very important. So it was surprising that, a lot of them even admitted to the fact that the listening skills aren't good and everybody committed to working on them. So once this awareness is there, I think that helps. So the first is the listening skills. The second was on appreciation. Do we even go out and appreciate our team members for work that's really done well and whatever. We're like, yeah, okay, fine, you're done with this. Okay, what's next? Or, we're always like criticizing and saying, this was not done right. This is not done well. This was not on time. It could have been better. But, if it comes out in a positive way, in an appreciating manner, I think the team is also motivated to do more, right? So the second was the appreciation. The third aspect was the learning. Even though you may be a leader, I think it's very important for you to keep learning regularly and being up to date with what's happening in your industry. And once knowledge is power. So once you know everything, you're also in a position to guide your team in a better manner. So third was on the learning, and the fourth was ego. They were saying like ego sometimes, yeah, tends to come in the way because as a leader, you think you know more, but if somebody wants to, saying some things or,
And you're expected to always have the answers. I mean, it's a kind of a catch 22
yeah,
for leaders. And
absolutely,
yeah,
absolutely. Yes, yes. So the ego was also playing up. And the last point was, how mindful are you in your actions? Because the team is always like, looking upon you as a leader. So, every little thing that you do, how mindful are you doing? Are you really like able to guide them and, take them along with you? And how is your presence being felt among them? So all the actions that you take and all that. So I think these 5 points that I mentioned, that is like, listening, appreciation, learning, ego, and the mindfulness, I think it's very relevant at any point in time for a leader. So once you go that extra mile, you may be like very, very good in your domain. You may be the domain expert, knowledge and all. But if you don't have the good team handling skills, and if you're not able to come across as a leader, a leader is not necessarily being a boss. If you will have to come across and
absolutely. Yeah, that's
yes,
one of the
yes,
biggest misconceptions of the
yes,
21st
that's
century.
right. That's right. That's right. So I think these were like very good lessons that has remained with a lot of people, and I love to share them because I think it's really pretty valuable. And the kind of transformation that I would really like is, since I'm a coach, I like to have the coaching mindset on, and I like to wear the hat of a coach. So I'm like, always trying to see what way I can maximize potentials, nurture the team, and
I can sense a lot of empowerment coming from you. So I think the coaching element is quite a good fit for you.
thank
And,
you.
yeah, and which brings me to my next point about the human element. Being such a fundamental aspect of organizations everywhere in the world, and so trying to juggle business priorities with staff's mental wellness, for example, would be a potential challenge. But how much of a priority is that for you personally? And then what are the steps? I mean, you've mentioned all of the work that you've been doing on a leadership level, because that's the top down element, which is wonderful. But what other steps are you taking to safeguard your teams as they operate within this abnormal normal?
So, uh, you know, contradictory to most finance people, I normally wouldn't like to say human resources, but I would say human capital, because I think the people are the most important asset of any organization. I remember when I'd been on a holiday to Glasgow in Scotland. There were like huge banners that said "People make Glasgow," which was like so true even for an organization. I mean, it's the people who actually make what the organization is all about. So, once we are able to acknowledge this to say, the people are the most important asset, then everything else becomes secondary. So, uh, people are not machines. We're not robo, right? So we need to have feelings, and we need to see how to capitalize on that. We have to, especially as leaders, we need to display empathy. We'll have to see what sort of mental support can be given to people, at times that are required. So I think those are very critical. We are like, it can't be all about just work. There's a lot more to it. You need to have that relationship built, and then the rapport and the trust element as well. So I think what has worked pretty well for me personally, and I do tell my other colleagues and team members follow is yoga and meditation. So I have personally been into art of living for the last, I think, 15 odd years, and this has really helped me. It's simple breathing exercises, like so every morning. It's like become a routine, like how you brush your teeth and you bathe. So every morning I set aside about 15-20 minutes, and I ensure I do these simple breathing exercises, and that has really helped me to de-stress, and has taken me all the way through, I would say. So I definitely encourage people. So even at work, we keep having short workshops, or desktop yoga, or we have people coming and talking in about importance of nutrition and stuff like that, so that people, yeah, you need to look at it from the other side as well. So that way we are like trying to see what is the best thing can be done.
So that kind of puts a lot of focus on, as you mentioned, the human capital, not the human element, which is wonderful. It is capital indeed. But then, contrasting that with the essential role of the business, the business continuity side of things. So one of the 101 statements that business figures are extremely familiar with is cash flow is king. And how does that play out at such a turning point in history? And how can companies safeguard that cash flow without having to let go of their staff or putting them on furloughs, which is kind of the magic switch that immediately manages cash flow?
So, like you said, yeah, cash is king. Cash is also oxygen, I would say, because, without cash, you can't do any business. So, what is required is a whole lot of cash planning. So, what I always say is your cash outflow is under your control, but not your cash inflow. So, especially in crises like this, what you could really control at this point in time is your cash outflow. So I would talk about like, 5 things again on how you can be like proactive and see how you can conserve cash. So the first thing I would say is, bucket all your cash outflow into highly essential, and non-essential. So that way, you know which one to prioritize. If it's something highly essential, you definitely have to go for it. Essential is, yeah, depending on your cash situation. And of course, if it's non-essential during times of crisis, best is to avoid such things. So one is, planning these expenses. Two can be on the tax planning. What can you really do as from the organization perspective, which are, sometimes, at least in India, the tax regimes are like too many things. It could be like little gems that are hidden inside. And so right now, every drop matters. So it may be a good idea to go through and see what sort of tax planning can be done. Third would also be to see if there are any special government schemes or benefits that are being offered. So, considering the crisis, I mean, even globally, if you look at it, like places like
Yes,
Canada and
it's
other,
been
yeah,
common practice exactly
yes,
everywhere.
yes. So it may be good option to check what are the schemes that are applicable, and how you could get benefited from those. So that would be option number three. Fourth would obviously be to renegotiate for better terms and conditions with both your customers and your suppliers, to see how you can go that extra mile and create a better cash situation for you. And fifth would be to see explore possibilities along with your teams, because once you take the team as part of the bigger team, then you actually can end up creating a win-win situation. Like I know of a friend, he runs a small business, and obviously the business was greatly affected by the current crisis. So what he actually did, and he didn't have a cash runway or enough cash, so what he actually did was he took into confidence the entire team, and then he said, listen, this is the cash situation I have, and you know how business is right now, so what is it that you want me to do? And when he put this out, so the team themselves said, like, it's all right, let's all go for a 50% salary cut right now, and then at a later date when the business picks up, probably we could be compensated with bonuses and stuff. So it makes a lot of difference when it comes from the staff, rather than you telling them, hey, I'm going to cut 50% of your salary, or I want you to go on furlough. There's a lot of difference when it's created from within. So I think that way, if you encompass, take everybody together as a team, and definitely, many brains is better than one single brain, right? So you
Always.
get a lot more
Always.
ideas as well. So
If they're willing to listen, of course, and the ego is not in the way, as you
oh,
mentioned.
yes. Yeah, but I think the beauty of the human being is, especially during times of crisis and challenging times, I think most of the times, most people tend to come together and want to support each other, because it's in the welfare of everybody, every individual as well as the organization as well. So I think that way it is pretty good. So the important thing is to communicate. I always say communicate, 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 because let everybody be aware of what's really happening and how they are being affected and stuff like that. So those are important. So in fact, I always keep, not to sound preachy, but then I like to keep stressing on the importance of cash. So like you probably know, I've
It
written
is
my book.
king
It's
or
yeah,
queen.
true that. Yeah. So I have written this book called What the Finance, and it's become a bestseller. So based on that, every week I keep posting on my YouTube channel. It's called Sangsha Sum. So I keep posting different, like 3 to 4 minute tidbits on finance, and most of these are on cash. Especially considering the current scenario. I keep telling people like how you need to conserve cash, especially if you're an entrepreneur or an MSME. How cash is crucial. And finally, even before this crisis hit, I always used to say that you need to get into the habit of creating reserves. So if you notice right now, if people who had good amount of reserves, they're at least able to kind of manage and meet both ends meet. So I think that is important. And what I also normally like to give is an acronym. The acronym is CASH. So I say C is to collect on time, A is to anticipate your inflow and outflow, S is to systematically monitor, and H is the habit of reserves. So I think these are like the basic principles for any business, irrespective of things. Yeah, big or small, it's important. Yeah.
So cash flow is queen indeed.
Yes.
That's amazing advice. Thank you for that. I'm sure our listeners are going to benefit from it, especially people within the finance function. I have one last question for you. As an ambitious, career driven woman, what is your advice to young, I was going to say women only, but in your case, since you've completely neutralized the gender gap, and something that I genuinely value and I respect you for, what would you say to a young woman or man who are entering the finance profession today? What would be your advice to them?
Just one thing. I mean, let your work speak for itself. So once you've given your very best, Nobody can really, dispute that, right? Once you're able to add value and contribute to the organization, to its growth, to its success, everything, then everything else becomes secondary, be it like gender, your difference of opinion, whatever else, everything else would fall apart. So the best way to shut the voices of others is to just prove yourself, is believe in you, know that you have the capacity and the potential to really get what you want. And I think that if that is your driving factor, then it makes life a whole lot easier for everybody.
This has been Count Me In, IMA's podcast, providing you with the latest perspectives of thought leaders from the accounting and finance profession. If you like what you heard and you'd like to be counted in for more relevant accounting and finance education, visit IMA's website at www.imanet.org.